Welcome to the Wild Creators Podcast, where we explore creativity and the art of creation. I'm your host, Aaron Embry. Let the adventure begin. Today we have another amazing guest who's a true creative master of connection. He connects ideas and people, processes and tools. Let's welcome Joel Shakespear, a visionary entrepreneur, creative professional, 6'2" generator, avid cycler. He helps people launch small work-from-home businesses by developing websites, designing powerful branding, and creating innovative, creative business solutions. Without further ado, let's dive into this super fun episode of the Wild Creators Podcast and my conversation with Joel.
WordPress and things break. And so anyway, so my buddy ends up fixing a lot of this stuff. And this came up because I had gone to a couple vineyards with the girl I was dating earlier in the year. And he's like, oh, I did all this work for all these wineries. And I was like,
oh, wow.
You should start a wine-specific marketing agency.
It's a great idea.
He's like, put it together. I was like, okay.
Nice. It's a really good idea because I can imagine that they all have to have websites, but they're probably having to either outsource it or DIY it, and it looks like crap.
So the part of this came up was because both of the wineries that I talked to, they were like, yeah, we need help with our websites. I was like, oh.
Yeah, probably.
So that's how the conversation came up with my buddy. And so I was like, let's just go after everybody. Like, why not? So
I've got
really good contacts, and it kind of just materialized on its own. I mean, I had to put the website together and all the branding and stuff, but like it wasn't that complicated. He already had like some case studies and
perfect. So you had some
he's got some clients that he still works with pretty consistently. So it was
and that makes me like want to immediately dive into, because you're so good at doing that, like seizing the opportunity, seeing them, and then like responding.
That's what I do. So I've got another buddy. We had a whiteboard session yesterday. He has spun up 2 AI-based marketing agencies. And literally, he's just a buddy of mine. He had a business development guy that he was paying probably really good money to, and he let the guy go because I've been more productive as a buddy doing business development for him than the guy that he was paying.
Right, because it's just so natural for you. You're just like
we were in the middle of the whiteboard session yesterday, and he's like, Joel farts better ideas than that guy. And I'm like, thank you.
Right.
I was like, I think that's a compliment.
And you're fired, Mr. Non-quarter of ideas.
Well, they already told that guy to kick rocks. So
you had already, that's all.
I'm in.
You are. I mean, and it's so natural for you. I mean, it is like.
Yeah, I'm a connector of people. So, and that's kind of why it came up. So I connected him with a friend of mine that they're spinning up a project in the automotive agency. Kind of a car membership program. Like you don't purchase the car, you download the app, you tell them what car you want, you pay your monthly thing, and all your maintenance and insurance and everything's included.
Oh wow!
They deliver it to your doorstep.
Wow.
They all the messaging's through the app.
So it's not like a rental, or is it like a lease, or is it?
It's similar to a lease, but it's a membership program. Yeah,
that's awesome.
Because a lease doesn't typically include like your insurance and all the scheduled maintenance stuff.
Right. So it's like a comprehensive package of everything you need. Wow.
So he's been working with them very successfully for the last 2-3 years. They are on the precipice of a big fundraising campaign. So they can like really go to market. So I think they're trying to raise like 5 or 10 million right now. So they can level up on what they've already built upon.
Yeah, it sounds like it's disrupting an industry.
It is. Well, it really is. And so there's that. And then more recently, I go to this networking group, and this guy I met does some AI, finance related AI tools. and so like, you might want to meet my buddy. He's pretty cool. He does a lot of other AI stuff.
That's awesome.
And so I went back to the group to try and run into that guy again, and he wasn't there, but like another buddy of mine, he was like, "Who are you looking for?" I was like, "Oh, that guy Mark." And Mark works for this company. And he's like, "Actually, you need to talk to Kerry. He's here. He's with the same company." So I talked to Kerry, and he's like, "Oh, you need to talk to me anyway, because Mark he's like, Kerry's the business development guy, and Mark is like in another role, so I would have ended up talking to Kerry anyway."
I think I remember the last time we chatted, you talked about like the magic of that moment, that synchronicity.
Oh my God. So, I get them, and so Kerry rattles off other things that they're doing. One of which specifically is an anti-human trafficking initiative. And so my buddy Matt has partnered with another company that has an AI-based anti-human trafficking solution. And one of Kerry's other fund, they have actually an investment fund that's specifically dedicated to eradicating human trafficking. So I put these guys in a room together, and we talk about the finance tool, and like we've been in the room for 2 hours, and like they're acting like they're about to wrap up. I'm like, no, we still need to talk about human trafficking, and they're like, oh shit. So we go through all that, and then so I mean, there's been some big developments there, and this is just stuff that I do, like just natural proclivity of connecting people that have like, I don't know, it's just what I do.
But you're also putting yourself, I mean, like you're going to networking events. I mean, you're pretty active as far as like, but you're also
like one of
things come to you, like opportunities come.
I fucking know everybody. Like that's kind of the running joke is like, oh, Joel always knows a guy. I'm like,
yeah, you do. You do. That's part of your creative toolkit is your network for sure.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. So
you've intentionally been. I mean, that has been intentional in your process, or it just happens because it's so natural.
My strategy for networking is like show up, have a couple cocktails, talk trash, maybe run into some cool people, and the rest just kind of happens on its own. Like, right. I kind of mentioned this since I've started meditating, which I think is what led us to the whole human design thing.
Right.
So since I've started meditating more, and I would say more appropriately, I feel like I was doing it wrong before, but like even more things seem to be coming together even.
Yeah, I want to talk about that a little bit again, now, because you felt like you had been meditating before, but it wasn't productive for you, or it wasn't working. It didn't feel like it was adding any value necessarily. And then you changed your technique a bit.
Well, so my initial understanding of meditation was just like sit there with an empty mind, like literally focus on your breathing. And if something comes into your head, you just push it away, like. But so I guess the clarification that I have had recently come into was if you're meditating and something does come into your mind, you should sit with it, think through, like go below that surface level thought and see like what the root of that is, and you might have to go a couple layers down, but like really sit with that and get to like kind of the core of it, come to terms with it, accept it. And that's what like the letting it go thing is. Like nobody explained it in that level of detail, I guess, before.
Right.
So like,
so it changed your whole practice at that point, and now, because you're not resisting all those thoughts now.
Right. Yes, exactly. And so there's was it the Japanese principle of Wu Wei is basically just not forcing things.
Right.
And so I feel like that kind of comes into play here too. And like just some weird issues that I've had in relationships and just in life in general. Like, we all like, everybody says like, oh, kids are resilient. And then I heard like the comeback, like, oh, if kids are resilient, why is everybody in therapy as an adult? Right? It's so true. And I mean, like, I guess those terms are being a little mixed, but Anyway, um, just some things that I guess I didn't really understand like the dynamics of what was coming into play. Like were creating hangups for me, and I think a lot of that meditation practice kind of helped me work through those, and then like also just kind of coming to the and I didn't feel like I was being like a real asshole before, but like um trusting that everybody's just doing their best.
Mhm.
And like if somebody's having a bad day, like, hey, you know what, like I don't have to be a dick back, I don't have to be a jerk back, I don't have to drive like a nightmare through traffic and like be all road
Right.
ragey.
It's created some space around like those like triggering
Right.
incidents.
Well,
Yeah.
and I mean, so I've had a lot of people comment just throughout my life, like how like even keeled I am, and like even I've been accused of being like vaguely stoic a number of times. And so, for me to be like this like pretty calm person and then get in the car and just be an absolute monster is
Right.
like really, like what's going on here?
Right. It's coming out somewhere.
Yeah, exactly.
Uh,
And now even in traffic, like most of the time, like I still have to be like, okay, just leave
yeah.
early, sit through it, whatever.
But you felt a shift definitely in how you're like
Absolutely,
facing
absolutely.
it.
Yeah.
And you mentioned in your creative process too, have you noticed like a difference creatively?
Yes and no. I will say, um, I would associate one of the products of this new meditation practice has been a huge increase in my an influx in work, and
Mhm.
so I've been doing a lot more client work. So my kind of personal time for creativity, like my own creativity, has kind of taken a back seat. Um, which isn't a terrible thing. Um, because I do work in a creative field, and
Right.
so I don't like clock in for my work and feel oppressed or anything. But it's not work for me, but
Right.
it's
Right.
still creative, and
Right.
so
Do you feel like do you miss doing creative work whenever you I mean, I know it's always good when I get a lot of client work, but then I start missing like my own work a little
I
bit.
do. So the funny thing is, okay, so I've been doing a lot of contracting through this agency. And I've noticed, like, when I remember being like probably 6 years ago was the last time I worked in a corporate office. Like, a lot of that time is just spent like warming a chair, you know.
Sure.
And
Wasted
so,
time.
well,
Yeah.
like I'm a pretty productive person, and I don't just drag things out unnecessarily. So it's like if people aren't just stacking me up, burying me deep with work, like I've got free time. And so, like, between projects at work, I would like fiddle around with stuff and design
Mhm.
fonts and just make funny little things just to entertain myself.
Right.
And I find myself doing less of that when I work from home, because it's like, well, I can walk downstairs and get a snack and talk with
Right.
the plants and
Go for a ride or
think with
whatever.
bikes, or go for a ride, or
Yeah.
run out for a 3-hour lunch, or like, not
Right,
saying that I
right.
didn't do that in the corporate environment, but it was
Right, right.
just less frequently. I honestly, I don't do that when I work from home much either. But
Right, right.
it's
But
just
you
like
do have
this.
the freedom to do other
I have,
things.
yes,
Yeah.
exactly. And,
Right.
and oftentimes, like right now, I have clients on the East Coast and the West Coast, so my schedule's a little wonky. But like, if I don't have meetings till like 10 or 11, I can go do whatever. I can sleep in. I can
Right.
know,
Right.
have
So you're not filling the
a
time with you have more variety of what you can fill the time with. Whereas when you're stuck in a corporate job, like and you're bored, of course you're gonna be creative. Like of course you're gonna like sit.
I was contracting for J.C. Penney for a couple of weeks, and they brought me in, and they were like, we're doing all this corporate presentation stuff, and we're swamped right now, but you're only here as a backup. Like, you're here as like the insurance policy if we can't handle it.
Oh wow.
And so they legitimately,
On-call designer.
dude, they were like, if somebody looks like they're important walks in, make it look like you're doing something. Here's how they literally had like a class on like, you know how on the Mac you have like the desktops that you can switch between with the
Mm-hmm.
hotkey.
Mm-hmm.
They're like, okay, this is how you use your hotkeys. Have something work related open here, and you can do whatever you want over here. But
Wow,
if
that's
somebody
awesome.
walks in, make sure you're on that work screen.
Wow.
And they didn't call it like look busy instruction, but that's exactly what it
That's what
was.
it was. Right,
Yeah.
right. So you had like free reign to just work on your own thing as long as you could
I
like,
designed an entire font while I was just sitting there bored.
wow, and got paid to do it. Right.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah, I basically built the start of my first business while I still had my day job because
I
I
did that
could.
too.
Yeah, exactly. You
The
know?
last company I worked for, they're like, "You're fired." I was like, "It's cool. I just launched my own agency like a week ago." And they're like, "You're not surprised?" I'm like, "No, I saw this coming.
I've been
I've been
preparing for this.
planning for this."
Right. But you're sort of an entrepreneur at heart. And I mean, I've known you a
Yeah,
while now. And I mean,
absolutely.
you definitely have always had sort of that like entrepreneurial
Yeah,
drive. And so that also comes natural to kind of, even when you're working for someone else, you're always hustling. You're always creating something else for
always
yourself.
be hustling. Yeah.
Oh, yeah,
I
for sure.
I just I have an active mind, and I am I'm not like crazy competitive ambitious, but like I want to accomplish things, and I would feel unproductive if I didn't do stuff. And it's not like a crazy torturous drive where I just am chained to the computer and never do anything fun and don't have a life. Like I got up this morning and went for a 20-mile bike ride and came
Wow.
home, showered, and here we are. you
Right.
know? I've got work to do, but it doesn't have to be done now.
Right. And that stuff help. I mean, is that's part of, and that's something else I'm talking about on this podcast is self-care. Like what I mean, meditation for me is part of that, but also like moving like physically, and
Absolutely.
it definitely helps me work better when I'm sitting here if I've biked or moved somehow,
Yeah.
went for a hike or something. So that's part of your like daily, it's kind of a creative practice in a way.
Absolutely. Well,
So
and just so through the meditation stuff, and like I find very often like on a bike ride, like you just kind of hit like this kind of zen state where you're not focused on any one thing, like you're navigating and you're dodging cracks in the pavement and you're
right.
looking at like weird birds on the side of the trail and like, oh, there's a coyote, oh, there's a turtle, there's all kinds of stuff to look at, on a ride. um and so the world just kind of melts away, and like you've got kind of this time to, I don't want to say like commune with nature, but like you're just kind of able to clear your mind and
Yeah.
de-stress
It
and get.
feels like the flow state while you're I mean,
Yeah,
it's kind of
exactly.
like creative flow, like when you're in that zone and it's just like
It is.
automatic almost. And it is almost like a meditation too. It's like a moving meditation.
Correct. Okay,
So
okay. So this is kind of a funny thing. There's therapy called EMDR, I believe.
hmm,
So they have this light that you follow with your eyes, and it's intended to mimic forward motion.
interesting.
And they found that sensory association helps very specifically with PTSD related trauma.
Really?
So I was talking with a couple friends who are in the psychiatry field, and I was telling them about this, and they're like, "Oh yeah, it's supposed to be really, really great." And I was like, "I wonder if that's part of why I enjoy cycling and thrill sports." And they're like, "Very probably." And I'm
Yeah,
like,
it makes sense that
"Well, I'm like,
that
what if we
forward.
started like a walking therapy session?" And they're like, "That's not a bad idea."
Look at you. Just can't help yourself.
But that's what I'm saying. Like, there's just stuff like that. Like, I think probably one of my um biggest talents, skills, whatever you want to call it, is just making like these kind of loose association connections that may not occur to other people. And it's funny because people within like a specific industry, especially if they've had to do a lot of schooling or training around any given subject, like they kind of lose focus outside of their little box.
Yeah.
And I think the thing that I kind of bring to the table in my creativity and entrepreneurial aspirations is making all these like kind of vague connections between seemingly unrelated things.
Right.
So
Because you know just enough to be able to connect things about a lot of things. It's funny. I was actually looking at your human design chart,
yeah.
and I can't remember the name of the channel, but it's the channel. I'll have to pull it up. But it's from the Ajna Center, so it's like the second one down to the throat center, and it's called the Genius to Freak. I have it too. I have the same channel, and it's about like
Genius to freak.
yes, because whenever you're so it's like you're either perceived
That
as a
sounds
genius,
inappropriate.
you're either perceived as a genius or a freak, depending on the timing of this. But it's about structuring ideas and then being able to vocalize them. So being able to take like, you know, conceptualizing things and then, structuring them in a way that other people can receive them, like vocalizing or communicating, expressing those ideas. So and people either see you as a genius or a freak, depending on the timing. Yeah, it should, because it's very much present in both sides of your chart, the red and the black. I think you have it on both sides. So so it's about being able to express those abstract concepts in a way that other people can actually connect with and like resonate with. So that is according to your chart part of like your design. So according to your chart. So
wow.
I thought that was interesting because I share the same channel.
Yeah, nice.
So
that's probably why we kind of vibe like this.
Yeah, for sure. And we had several that's called hanging gates, when you just have half, it'll be and then it's blank on the other side, so it doesn't go all the way to a center, where you'll have one side and I have the other side, and so it like creates a connection. So it opens this channel of connection. So we seek out those hanging gates in our channel. We find other people who have the other side, and that's where we form connections with people, and it opens this channel. So we have a lot around creativity and communication, and so I thought that was kind of interesting. And yeah. We'll chat again when I can actually like show your chart, because I'm so visual. I want to like point to things. So, but I always, I don't know how much of human design will be part of these conversations, but it's how.
Yeah, I think it's cool.
Yeah.
And I don't know a whole lot about it, but it seems like kind of fascinating.
It has been for me, for sure, and it's a whole like new dimension of seeing people. So it's fascinating for me to like people I've known for a while to like get their charts and be like, oh, that makes so much sense. And of course you're a generator, which makes so much sense because generators are like magnets for opportunities and people, and
that's the kind of like what I've sensed is like since beginning this new meditation practice, like that generator kind of aspect is like really just kicked into overdrive. It's wild.
No doubt. Like as you've created this space mentally, it probably has like energetically or whatever created space for people to like all these opportunities and people, and which you had already been doing like intuitively.
Right, probably it's just happening even faster now, I guess.
Right. Yeah, for sure. And then you have a built-in like guttural response because you're a responder, so you can either feel it like as a like or and so you just sit back and wait for these opportunities, and then you're like or hell yes. Or yeah, and it's amazing to see that you were already doing that before you even were aware that human design was a thing. You were already
I downloaded my chart and I like tried to look up as much as I could, but like a lot of it I just don't. Like what you're telling me, like I've seen my chart, but I didn't know that. So
well, it's a lot. When you first download your chart, it's like for me, it was so overwhelming. I'm like, what is all this?
Yeah,
And so I took,
I was Googling like all the different things and like reading. I've got like a couple PDFs that I downloaded and
there's
some other
tons of
reference
information.
material. But like I'm only picking up like little bits here and there, and it seems to be more overarching themes than like really specific things because
Specific to you.
I just don't know. Yeah.
I'll record a little video for you because I had your chart pulled up and I can I've done it for a couple of people where I go through their chart and just kind of like describe, explain what the different parts are. But yeah,
Well,
I
I
mean,
mean, do you want to screen share and just do it, or
yeah, I mean, I can. I wanted to be sure to talk about like because I also wanted to talk about Squidoodle with
oh,
you.
okay,
To totally change gears, but yeah, I mean, depending on our timing, well, I'll definitely screen share. But I wanted to make sure that I talked about everything on my little list here. Uh,
okay.
so when was Squidoodle birthed into existence? Because
Uh, it's so I think that was one of the things that I kind of bulleted in our what
yes,
we talk about.
yes.
I didn't think about that, but so that started with the Illustrati, and I didn't think about this when I got dressed, but I have my Illustrati
Oh, you're
shirt
illustrated.
on.
Very nice. Very nice.
And so the
Classic.
Illustrati concept started with my buddy Justin, and we were both working for Humana, a division of Humana. This was probably 12 years ago. This would have been right before you and I met.
So wow.
Yeah, and so he was early in his career. I was much earlier in my career. Um and so he has a really natural ability for just reaching out to people randomly, and so he had a bunch of like graphic artists and creative people that he admired and just like kind of started conversations with randomly. And we came up with this concept of doing a calendar, inviting all these like top tier designers to contribute to it, and then we would insert our own pieces as well. So now we're associated with these guys. And now we've got like a project that we've done together, and like kind of like this kind of underlying cred, based on the association.
Hmm.
So that's where the Illustrati started. The next phase after that was actually doing a website which hosted design competitions, and then doing a quarterly self-published magazine featuring the winners. But so the Squidoodle, to answer the question, Squidoodle was the origin of Squidoodle was my entry into the calendar.
Gotcha. Okay, so it was born a while back. Okay.
Yeah,
But you held on to it because it is a genius little illustration.
I've always kind of been fascinated by like squids and octopi and cephalopods in general, and it's just kind of a fun character. Um, I don't, it's just one of those weird things that I just kind of developed and just kind of ran with. So
Yeah, and you still and now Squidoodle is merch. Like
yeah,
you've
well, I started my buddy Demario makes enamel pins. And so
nice.
he saw some of my art and he's like, dude, we should do a pin. I'm like, cool, let's do it. So I did like a batch of 100. I still have a few laying around.
Oh, nice.
Uh, and so I did a run of those, and then I found a couple drop ship clothing portals where I can kind of design my own clothing and
Mhm.
merchandise, and then they connect with Etsy. So like I have a whole Etsy shop set up around
What's
Squid
your Etsy
Doodle.
shop? So it's just all Squidoodle merch, or do you
Most
have
of
other
it.
stuff?
Some of
Most
it.
of
I also have some like weird kind of Fibonacci sequence artwork.
okay, interesting.
It's like
Okay.
very geometric. in general, but also a lot of squidoodle stuff.
Awesome. What's your Etsy? I don't even know if I have that.
it's
Uh,
it's, uh, it's called Hex Life, which
Excellent.
is
Oh, okay. I think
reference to
excellent.
hexagons. But like, I'm like, why does all this witchy stuff come up when I try to Google it? I'm like, maybe I picked the wrong name.
Oh, right. Hex. Oh, yeah. I can see that. People are like, I need to buy
Right.
witch spies.
I'm trying to get a sweet
Spell.
one over here.
You may find a
no,
whole new
no, it's just these weird
niche.
squids and stuff.
That's awesome. So,
and
so Squidoodle lives and is still available for purchase.
if you are so inclined,
Right.
been disappointingly unpopular.
That is surprising.
I don't know. Maybe I haven't found my people.
Niche market. Yeah, I was gonna say
Yeah.
maybe who knows? People are like, there's a whole.
So, I can see all the search words that come up
Oh, you
when
can.
people view my stuff, and hentai is at the top of the list every time.
No way. Maybe a
I mean,
Squidoodle after dark. I don't
what he does in his spare
know.
time.
That's right.
Not depicted here.
That- so, are you? Is I forgot what I totally forgot what to ask. I feel like I had this. My I have a whole new perspective of Squidoodle now. That's surprising. Uh, are you still when you create, like when you do your own art, do you consider yourself an illustrator? I mean, is that if you had to categorize yourself, or do you even think about that anymore? Or you just consider yourself a creator at this point, or
Yeah, I mean, I
because you
would
do
it
photography, you
fall
do,
under an illustration kind of technique, yeah.
yeah,
But then so I've been doing a lot of squidoodle with like geometric backgrounds for a long time, and then I came across the Great Wave of Kanagawa has entered public domain. I was like, I want to do a mashup of squidoodle with the Great Wave of Kanagawa, and so that's kind of what like the latest batch has been around, and that's where a lot of the merch has come from.
is that mashup because it is
Yeah, and I was
is
like, because like we've all seen like it so a new concept is very difficult for people to grasp and associate with. So squidoodle is quite foreign to most people,
right,
but like the mashup of like something old and familiar like the Great Wave of Kanagawa and doing a mashup with like my weird squid stuff in
right.
my mind was like, this is perfect, people are actually gonna like this. Mm.
It didn't open the door to for Squidoodle.
Well,
Or
again, maybe I'm just not marketing right. Maybe I haven't like connected with that right audience yet. But
maybe
I don't know. I do it for
that
me. I
is
honestly don't. I'd never thought I would like get rich selling like weird squid art, but
right, but because sometimes the ideas just have to come out,
I'm
and
gonna do it either way. Like
right,
people want to buy my stuff or not, I don't care.
right.
You know,
Because it's still about the joy of creating the thing and actually like
I bought way more samples than I've sold of anything.
of anything.
I had some people over there. They're like, you got wall art over there, you got a pillow, you got a candle, like what is all this? I'm like, oh, that's my artwork. And they're like, what? Like, yeah, I'm like buying up all my own stuff.
I'm my number one fan myself too.
Yeah,
So
I made
we
it for
have to
me.
be.
Exactly.
Yeah, we have to
I got
be.
a
I
hoodie,
mean,
I got a jacket, I got
oh, that's
like
awesome.
bags and backpacks, and
And see, and you're promoting it every time you wear it. Listen, or
I
use it.
posted on my Instagram, like I was wearing it on a bike ride, and it was like kind of unzipped, so it's like kind of fluttering behind me because somebody was shooting a video. I don't know, it's fun.
Nice. See, I mean, I feel like it's great when we can make money from the art, but and I have to categorize it or compartmentalize it myself
Oh,
because the stuff that I make for myself, it's got to be for me first, and I may be able to monetize it, but if I don't, it was more about the process of creating it or like, the act of self-expression or whatever other internal reason I needed to put that out into the world. But
right.
uh, it's not I had heard someone else say, it puts a lot of pressure on art when it has to be our income also.
Yeah,
Like, it kind of kills it in
I
some
think that
sense.
distracts from like the creative processes, and I think people who may randomly come into some popularity or commercial success, I think everything after that kind of is tainted by like, how do I recreate that success?
Mhm.
And I see it in a lot of music too. Like you'll find an artist, their first album is just like really, you connect with it,
Yeah,
it's mind blowing. And then their follow-up releases are kind of like subpar because they're trying to like chase that formula
right.
to that brought them that initial success to begin with. Um,
Right. It's not
I
as
mean, some
pure as
artists
that.
like really run with it, and other ones like just fail miserably. So
So true. It is interesting because I do feel like that it does taint the process somewhat whenever you're like, oh, that worked. Let me see
right.
if I can do that again. And then it's not about
um,
like being purely just a creative, like a vessel for creation to happen through you. It
right.
becomes like this, you become more like a factory or a production. It becomes about the production of the thing that made you money and less about like the act of creativity. Uh,
Right. Well,
so
it's funny because like so the internet and social media has kind of created a lot of um success in the art world. But like pre-internet and like probably before our times is like, I mean, the famous saying was like famous when you're dead. Like, people
so
don't
true.
even land on the map till like long after their creative process has ended.
So true. Uh,
So
and I think about whenever I told my parents I was going to be an art major, they're
they're
like,
like,
"Oh, you're
no.
an artist." What's the point? And I had to quickly follow it up with like commercial art. Like I'll do commercial art
Right.
and sell my soul. And
Yeah. That's kind of what happened to me as well. I've been creative like since I was a kid. I always liked to draw and had kind of like this natural sense of like spatial relations, I guess. And so, I graduated from high school and I didn't really know what I wanted to do. I didn't feel like 4-year college was what I really wanted to chase. But my mom suggested to go to a tech school, so I went and toured the campus for commercial art. And I was like, yeah, this seems okay. And then at the end of the tour, they're like, well, we've got a new technology, like, multimedia, graphic design, all computer based stuff. Do you want to check that out? I'm like, yeah, okay. And after that tour, I was like, this is where I need to be. This is
so you were sold immediately once you realized what was.
absolutely, yeah,
Oh, wow.
like no hesitation. So
That's awesome. I don't think I had ever heard that story, like your origin story into this work,
uh,
into your
I don't know if
design
I call
work.
it origin story, but yeah.
How
I
you
went
came
to a,
to like
went
find
to a tech
your
school. It just barely equipped me to like, be out in the world.
so true. It's a slow progress
Yeah.
process of like finding your way and
Mhm.
but have you freelanced pretty much your entire career or did you like you have always so you've
I
always
started
been
out freelancing. I worked, so it's kind of funny. So right after graduating, so they told us like, oh, you should be making like 40 a year right out of school, no problem. We've got like a 98% placement rate, which was
oh wow.
bullshit.
Did not happen.
Um, so I connected with a company in Austin shortly after graduating. I was doing a lot of contract work for them. They love my work. They were paying me a pretty good rate, and they made me an offer to come on board full time. But their offer wasn't 40 a year. It was like 30, 35,
Right.
which was still would have been great. But I had this like grandiose idea that I should be making a certain amount, and I turned them down.
Wow. Just just
And I did not make 40 a year for probably another 5 or 6 years. Like it took a
yeah,
long
took
time
a
before I
while.
was at that level. Um, and they so that company that made me the offer went on to be like a very influential big firm in Austin, and they
Oh,
were just
interesting.
hosting special events for like South by Southwest Multimedia Festival and like all this crazy stuff. And like, I came like trying to knock at that door again. They're like, nah.
Oh, you're like, you know what?
Like,
Maybe I,
no.
maybe I'll give up a few grand a year for that experience. Yeah, it's so hard when you're first coming out. I mean, you just have no, I mean, when you're first like graduating and trying to find that, I
Well,
don't think it's a totally different experience now even than when we were like emerging into the field and
I think that I don't think the preparation was the problem. I think I really feel like if they had not told me that like I should be making a certain amount, like I wouldn't have this preconceived notion of what I should have been making.
right,
So that offer would have seemed much more realistic.
right,
I wouldn't have had that bar set too high.
right.
And so the offer would have been
Sounding pretty good right out of school. Yeah.
looking
It's,
back, I'm like, you dumbass.
right.
You know?
It's so
Like,
easy to see now.
yeah,
Like,
my first full-time job after graduating was working for a startup making like 24 a year,
right.
you know,
Yeah.
which was way less than what they offered. And it's just, like I think I had a couple years of like reality to like set with before I was like, man,
That was a
those
pretty
are
good offer.
streets.
Right,
You know?
right. Perspective is so helpful. It always comes a little too late to like do any good in that moment.
Yeah.
Older and wiser now.
Yeah, hindsight
Uh,
2020.
yeah, but I mean, you probably gained like invaluable experience, with the path that you ended up on.
Theoretically.
It was, yeah, that led you to
Well,
where,
I had another really great offer that I turned down. I don't know if I would say foolishly, but I had interviewed for a graphic design position, and I went in for an interview, and like they went through my portfolio, and he's like, "So your website, did you code that yourself?" And I was like, "Yeah." He's like, "What'd you use?" I was like, "Notepad." He's like, "What?" He's like, you want to be a coder?" I was like, "Nope."
nope.
He's like, "You write really clean code." I was like, "I know. I like to know what's what. Like I'm
Right,
not gonna make a big messy jumble of stuff because I like to know what's going on. I like organized. I like clean."
right.
He's
But
like,
you also
"What?"
knew that you did not want to do code, that was not the
It's
gig.
so boring to me, you
Yeah,
know.
yeah.
And I had learned director and lingo, which was like kind of a precursor to Flash and all
Yeah.
that business. Um,
Director, I forgot about director. It's a few moons ago.
yeah, yeah, DVDs. Remember those?
Oh yeah, vaguely, vague recollection. Oh,
Anyway,
technology.
so yeah, and it's still problem solving and creativity, but it was just I didn't want to do that.
Right.
That I don't regret as much as turning down another
That,
job.
that first job.
There's
We
this kind of
all have
like,
those now. Yeah. Yeah. It's it's interesting to look back, but you did the best, you made the best decisions at the time that you could, I'm sure.
theoretically.
And so are you creating anything right now? Are you working on anything? Or do you have any projects on the back burner that you come back to or revisit, or are you just kind of like
Um,
managing your client work right now?
it's mostly client work right now. I am in the process of developing an app, and I'm at a point where I need to raise funds to move forward with that. But it's the loose concept is connecting entrepreneurs and funding.
Oh, nice.
So, and there's a lot more to it that I don't want to get into right now,
Yeah,
but
we're gonna do the idea farm thing. We'll have a
yeah,
full.
dude, I really want to bring that back. I
I do.
really,
I do too. The more I thought about it, I was like, we really. I don't know why we could have gone virtual, but
I know,
it kind
but
of
like
came
when
to
it
an
made sense when you
accident.
said it, and I was like, we should have been doing this for years.
I know. Should have. I know. And it did seem like we went out like it was starting to get more like
Yeah, we were kind of gaining momentum, and then it was like gone.
Yeah. So, well, I am excited about the prospect of it coming back and at least having that space where you can talk about the details and get feedback and,
Sure, for sure.
and just have like, uh, I always considered it, I like farming metaphors, I like gardening metaphors for the creative process, but it felt like really like fertile soil for the creative process, like where
Oh,
we could
absolutely,
like
absolutely. Well, and I feel like doing it virtually because it was really challenging for some people to be able to be there.
yeah, yeah, for sure.
So that maybe the virtual thing will help it gain even more momentum. Even if we do it in person occasionally, doing it virtual, I think would just maybe open the doors to even more people.
Probably so. Uh, yeah, I am excited about the prospects of it, resurfacing and having that space
I've
again.
had people ask me like, "When are you bringing it back?" I'm like,
That's
"Well, it's
awesome.
not me."
Well, let's do it. I'm all about it. So we will bring
Like,
it back.
I was like, I was a huge supporter of it, but I was like, that was not my project.
Yeah, well, I mean, it wouldn't have existed without you,
Well,
probably.
thank you, but
Yeah.
like, I can't. I'm not going to claim that as mine. Like,
Well, well, I'm all about it. I feel like it, you
I
know,
love it.
yeah, I do too. I mean, it's awesome. So I'm all for it. So we'll make that happen for sure, virtually for sure. And then I like the idea of like every once in a while having in person, because especially the last couple of years, I mean, even before then, I recognized the fact that I missed having like colleagues and you know uh, seeing coworkers. After I left my job, I was glad to be out of my corporate job, but I was also like, oh, I kind of miss people sometimes, but
exactly.
like the
It's like,
cool creative people sometimes. uh,
so here for me, it's like I miss having colleagues to go to lunch with once in a while.
yeah,
I do schedule time to have lunch with friends every
that's
now and
good.
again.
That's
But
good.
like in general, I really enjoy working from home and not having people just like interrupt me and
Yeah,
all that stuff.
for
So
sure, for sure.
it's not, and there's advantages and disadvantages to every situation. So
So true, so true. I mean, I'm a like lone wolf, so I love it, but I also like having uh, you know, friends, social connection, especially since moving to East Texas too. That
oh
was
yeah.
like my outlet to be able to go back and like see people and
So I mean, I feel like we talked about this a while back, but like, do you have like a social circle there? Do you have?
it's growing. Like it was kind of slow going when I first moved
Yeah,
here because it's not like and Longview is kind of a big town in East Texas for East Texas. It's a big
yeah.
town, but it's also
So
sort of what's that?
my ex-wife, that's where she grew up.
Oh, that's right. That's right. So you had some knowledge of and
I
it's
know Longview a little bit. Like I've been
yeah, yeah. So it's
a
not like
lot of
it's not the worst town in East Texas to be, but it's also not
no.
like it's not
So okay,
it,
okay, okay. So you're still doing photography, I presume, right?
yeah, yeah.
We'll have an offline chat about this, but the abandoned toilet factory,
You told me about that a long time ago.
it
Is it
is
in
in your backyard.
is
Yeah.
it really? And it's still a thing?
It last time I was there, it was still there. I mean, we,
Fascinating.
we had to talk to the cops,
Yeah.
but
Oh wow.
they weren't mad at us. They were like, "You're not on the train tracks, are you?" And we're like, "No," and they're like, "Oh yeah, you're good."
Okay. They didn't care about the toilets.
Yeah, they're like the factory is like, we don't care about the factory. Just
That
don't go on
is
the train tracks.
wow. Yeah. I forgot that you told me that this magical place existed. Uh
Yeah,
it's
it's wondrous.
for photography, I'm sure.
Oh,
We'll definitely
yeah.
discuss. We'll discuss separately.
Have
Uh,
I've showed you that the shoots that we did out there, didn't
I
I?
think you did. It's been a while. I would like to see him
Yeah.
again though, because it's
Okay.
been a minute. So
Uh,
we'll
I
you
think
have
there's
him
a
online?
photography website. Hmm?
Do you have him online? Is what I was wondering. Do
Oh
you?
yeah, I know there's several on my photography website.
Okay. Are you still doing photography? Or are you not so much
Sometimes
when it comes up?
I well, I started dating somebody a couple of years ago, and our on our first date, she had mentioned that she had scheduled a boudoir photo shoot coming up, and I was like, "Oh, I do photography. If you want to do like, kind of a test shoot before then, just to see." And so we shot several times over the period of time that we were dating. It's just kind of a hobby for me, really.
Yeah.
I was at the FOE this past Sunday and connected with a girl that does wine reviews while wearing lingerie for her OnlyFans account, apparently. And
There's a niche
somebody,
for everything.
right? And so my friend was like, "Oh, he does photography," and she's like, "Do you want to shoot sometime?" I was like, "Maybe." Like,
Maybe.
but I was like, "But my wine tech company and your wine review thing." I was like, "We there's some natural synergies there. Let's
Yeah, for
talk."
sure.
So
Probably more than one. Yeah.
I'll be doing some weird stuff with
That's
wine soon. I don't know.
nice. Look at you connecting ideas and people.
But I do
That's
apparently.
that's that's
Yeah.
where the magic happens. We've spent nearly our whole time, but I don't. You want me to do a quick screen share and point at your thing, or do you have a hard stop? I think I want to make sure I covered
I
everything.
don't. I mean, we can just keep going. You
Yeah,
can
because
edit.
the other thing, yeah, I'll probably edit out some of
Yeah.
this, but the other thing is, I thought I could binge the Midnight Gospel. I cannot binge that show.
Um. Okay, cut to commercial.
You have to kind of watch an episode and like process it, and then
Yeah,
move on to the
definitely.
next
I thought I
one.
was going to be able to like blow through them, but I'm like, oh, I got to slow
A
down.
lot
It's
to
like,
take in.
it's a lot.
And I watched it. I've watched it like probably three times,
The
and
whole, all of the
yeah,
whole.
and
Oh
you'll
wow.
you'll continually notice new things if you go back. And
Oh
I you
yeah,
probably need to watch it again after like because I watched it probably a year or two ago, and I think I've learned a lot since then, and so I think
so you're
rewatching it would probably make me notice even more stuff.
for sure, as because your perspective has changed so much in the last couple of years. Yeah, yeah, it's really interesting. It's almost like the visuals are a trip.
So yeah, and yes, so you're listening to the dialogue, which is almost completely unrelated to what's happening on the screen, and
Yeah,
so part of why watching it several times, like you're having to take in, like if you watched it once and only listened to the dialogue, that would be one thing. And then if you
right,
watched it again and just completely dismiss the dialogue and only watch what was on screen, that would be a whole nother story to take in. Like
right.
it's wild
It's
how
very layered. Yeah, and I had to find myself like after a while because I'm like my old eyes, like it's so overwhelming. Some of the visuals, I'm like, I have to just listen to this one. And so I'll have it like on, which it is a whole different experience just listening
right,
to because then it's like a podcast. I mean, it is the content is from a podcast. It's like
correct.
Could I interview you for my space cast? Are you worried because it seems like we're all about to die?
Is that a yes?
What does death look like to you? I think we need to simplify.
But then they have put like they've given somebody some really good drugs and be like animate it.
right. I mean, no doubt you would have to be like, take all the drugs and then animate because a lot of it like how do you even illustrate some of these concepts? It has to be trippy. I mean, so
It's some
but it's
wild-
really fascinating. Like
yeah,
it's but I have to do it in doses.
yeah,
Yeah, it's very creative. Like it is like it's inspiring how, but it's just on every level.
absolutely.
Yeah, it's good. Thanks for sharing that too, because
Sure.
it's unlike anything I've seen before. But what'd you say? It's like weird
Yeah,
in the weird in like the best way.
it is. It is. Well, and I think the thing that it because it is about all the kind of like transcendental kind of perspectives, but when you layer it with like literal like drug coma fodder, like just the trippiest shit you can imagine, um, it just it and some of it is I think intentionally connects like, and I don't think it was like meant to be like an ironic kind of way, but like there's one, I think the last episode where they're talking about rebirth, and like there's this whole like scene that like it's really trippy, but it's also like very moving as well.
That is, yeah. It was surprisingly, as trippy as it is like really like
It,
moving.
it's like metaphoric.
Yeah, it is. And it's poetic. It's like, yeah, it is. Yeah, it's really interesting because it can be trippy and sort of beautiful, like oddly beautiful.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And so, yeah, I have not met many people that have really appreciated it on probably the level that you and I do.
Sure.
But when
Yeah.
I remember watching, I was like, holy shit. I
Yeah.
told people about it and they're like, that's weird.
It's weird.
I'm like, yes, but
yes, right. Like if you can just set your judgments aside and like just take it in. That's true. That is true. They did create very like it's a very specific market
like
for this.
Squadoodle.
Like Squadoodle, right? Squadoodle has just, it's just waiting for the right time.
I'm gonna
yeah, absolutely. You got to.